I am going to be your host, Elise Goma from Digital Extremes, and we have with us some very talented people from my screen, or at least your screen. We also have a guest with us today, a guest animate. So in no particular order, Henry from Ben Studios. Did I say Henry? I said that wrong because we're talking about the other person. Fuck. It's always so hard to do that. David from Ben Studios. That was your fault. You messed me up. Sedona from Ubisoft Reflections. Alec from Sony Pictures Imageworks. And we have our guest from my co-worker from Digital Extremes. Very lovely.
Tim Sorman, yeah.
Tim Sorman. I don't know why that's so hard. It's like names just go out of my brain as soon as that happens. But we have a great show for you today. We were inspired because we saw a tweet that some students are now ending up with over $150,000 US dollars worth of debt for going to animation schools, and we wanted to talk about going to university, whether it was worth it, if there's alternatives, if that's not something you want to do, if there's things that aren't brick and mortar schools that you could go to, and if that matters when applying for a job, if you perhaps need a visa and want to move country, that kind of thing. So to get started, I think we should kind of go around and say what our experience was, how we got in the industry, what education we used, and if any of us have done online schools. So let's start with Tim. Do you want to let us know how you got in the industry?
Okay. Well, I might not be the best example to talk to this because it's been like 15 years, and I was super, super lucky where it was pretty much covered for me. I went to like a 4-year university that was kind of a no-name university. Like it's not a known animation school, and the program was pretty new at the time. So the value per dollar there might not have been super high, but I didn't have a bunch of debt because my parents covered it. So I got that. I did need a lot more skills, like practice and training when I graduated. I wasn't ready to get work yet. So I did one more year in the like graduate program at Sheridan, which is also a little bit of like you get what you put into it, but it helped a lot. Just focusing strictly on animation and art and drawing for 1 year solid with a bunch of classmates that were all pushing each other. And I ended up getting hired right afterwards at the same studio where one of my instructors worked. So worked out through, working hard and I guess at least looking competent to one of my teachers.
And have you done any animation schools or other courses or anything like that since?
I haven't done anything since. No. Just learning on the job and stretching that as far as I can take it kind of.
Yeah, that's great. I think one of the things you said that was awesome was you get what you put into it, and I think that is true for literally everything we're going to talk about. Is that you can go and you can pay top dollar and go to the best school in the best place, and you can still come out with no usable skills and not get a job. And you can also go sometimes to a kind of rubbishy place and work your butt off, and maybe that's not the most effective way of doing it and there's better choices, but you can still get a hell of a lot out of it if you're working really hard. So let's go to whoever I've got on my screen next. Alec, how did you get in the industry? What was your education like?
So I went to the UK for like 3 years. I studied in Worcester, and after that, one of my teachers actually, he was very, he liked my stuff. Like I was doing some tutoring on the side, and he set me up for like an interview and like a job in Bristol, and I got my first job basically. It was like a 2D/VFX kind of stuff / motion graphics artist kind of thing. So yeah, that was fun. And then after that, I decided that I want to do like more like 3D stuff. And I went to anim school where I kind of got, trained into it more, and then got a job at a few other places, a TV company, and Framestore, and then Sony. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. I like that you did the traditional thing, you went to school, and then you were like, actually, I want to do this other thing, and then you found the online school was the better way of doing it. Did you feel like you benefited from doing the university stuff first, and then, or do you kind of wish that you'd gone straight for something like NM school?
I mean, like money-wise, I wish like I went straight to IM school. But in terms of like learning all the principles and how to like think about automation in a 2D perspective was a lot helpful from uni. So I don't know. In that case, I'm happy that I went to uni, and I also met my spouse there, so it's like another benefit of it.
Ah, who needs one of those?
Yeah. So I think that's really like the whole thing for me. But yeah, it was definitely helpful when I started doing 3D at the anime school. It helped me a little bit more.
Yeah, you did the full anime school course, or did you do the thing where you jump in at like level 4 and then go?
I did the full one because I wanted to see how to animate everything from like the beginning. So I did like with a bouncing ball, straight in there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Henry, not Henry. God damn it!
You are
David.
Killing me today.
I know. It's just in my defense.
You know what? Congrats, you're Sedona now. Sedona, you're Brenda.
There was a thing before stream. It's not my fault. Oh my god, I've got GDC brain. That's what it is.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Me too. Mine's
David,
still just wiped out from that.
Please tell me all the things while I pick my brain off the floor.
Okay, so I actually went to 4 different colleges when I was going through my education. I failed out of 2 of them, and then eventually ended up at Full Sail, which was a 4-year program in 2 years. I ended up getting my job through networking through my career services program. So I'd say, yeah, the education was definitely worth it. I was able to make some great network connections there. I was able to learn all I needed to know, and it was enough to where whenever I ended up at my first job, I knew exactly what I needed to do and how to do it. So it was a worthwhile experience, I'd say.
Right, and you have done some online schools or not yet, or don't plan to?
Yeah, I did. I did some supplemental education. I tried to make it a goal of mine to take a new class every year just to kind of add to my current knowledge base.
Yeah.
So, but it was all stuff that was just kind of related. So I did anatomy classes. I did color theory. I did rigging courses just to kind of brush up on that. And this year I'm trying to take an animation course. So, yeah, I've done a little bit of the animation school, but not like the full program or anything like that.
Yeah. Whereabouts did you find those courses?
What did I do?
What did you do?
What did I do? It was I can't remember the name of the school. It was like CG
Society? No.
Sagittarian, CG Spectrum.
It was like CG Masters or something like that.
Yeah, like CGMA.
CGMA, thank you. That was it. I did that. And then for rigging, I actually went back to Full Sail because they let you audit courses for free after you graduate. So I was just like, hey, I wasn't great at this. I'm going to go back and just kind of rehash it, and
nice.
It was extremely beneficial.
Yeah.
But that wasn't really an online thing. I actually went back to the school to do it.
Right. And Sedona.
Okay, yeah, bear with me. I choked on some bubble tea. So
you are obsessed.
Yeah, I'm a bit hoarse. So I did 6 years of schooling, 1 at a university, the second one at a college after I realized that my university degree was not going to get me anywhere into the games industry. I should probably preface, I think a lot of people already know, all of this, but I'll just reiterate. So I did a game development and entrepreneurship career, 4-year course, and then I did, when I realized I went to study in college, and then dropped. I had to graduate in my 2nd year instead of my 3rd year because I was out of money at that point because I only had $80,000 to work with, and I was out, so I immediately threw myself into it was like a grad screening that they let me into because they were nice, and then I got a job at ARC and started on my weird animation career.
Cool.
And as for online schooling, I did attempt one. Unfortunately, I flunked it because my quota at work was 3 times as much as I was told it was going to be. So like literally 3 times. So
Life
I
happens.
burned out really hard and I couldn't keep up with both. So
Yeah,
and now I'm
it's
doing
tough.
some like free schooling with a coworker who is just mentoring for shits and giggles.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I had a fairly similar experience. I think I did university in the UK, 3-year digital animation course at the University of Hertfordshire, which I loved. I think it's a great course. Very much recommend it. I think they do a really good job of like in the first year giving you like a bit of everything, so that in case you kind of go, oh, actually I really like this other thing. I was getting into it for this, but I really like this other thing. You can kind of like do that instead in the second year, and also to kind of give you like a broader base of stuff to do. And then after that I went straight to work in industry, but I also did an animation school course, so I just did one term which is three months, and I did that after work. So I think one of the things that we talked about that so when you talk about how much money people have to spend, it varies a lot depending on where you're based, right? Like what you pay in the UK, what you pay in America, what you pay in Canada, what you pay in a bunch of other places in Europe and things is going to be vastly different depending on their structure. And I think it's worth talking about the value you're going to get out of that course for that amount of money versus other options that you have available. For example, I think we made a quick spreadsheet of some of the prices that you're going to end up paying, and we actually worked out that in US dollars, you could go to anim school for 4 terms for 4 years, so 16 terms, and still save 10-15 grand on what you would be spending on 1 year going to Ringling. So that's a big difference. And you know, when I was in the UK, I was the last year before tuition prices got raised by 3 times the amount. So when I was there, I was paying about $3,900 for 1 year. So in comparison to an online course, it's kind of equivalent. It's not that different. And then the year after me was paying 3 times that, so they were starting to pay more, closer to 12 grand a year. So that's when you got to start going, okay, is this worth it? And when you're seeing places like CalArts go up to like 60 grand a year in US dollars, and people coming out with an art degree or an animation degree with 150k worth of debt, that's when it starts getting a little scary. So what do you guys think about that in general? I don't know, this is the best way to start, but
I have opinions, but I'll I don't know if any of you guys want to start at all.
Pick someone.
Oh, me?
Okay, I'll go.
Oh yeah, go. No, go.
Okay. All right. So, I think the biggest things is, like, again, I came from a school in which my tuition started at $11,000 a year.
Canadian.
And Canadian.
Right.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like,
Right.
to be fair, it's a lot.
Yeah.
$11,000 a year Canadian is still $11,000 a year for
This is
me,
gonna be a lot of
because I only
currency
make
talk.
so much. I only make Canadian dollars.
Yeah.
So.
And you're paying like
So
30%
it's like
tax
Monopoly
in
money.
Canada.
Yeah. So yeah, shush you. You can give me your Canadian money, thank you. No, I went to a school that I made some mistakes in regards to choosing the school of my choice. I had gone in a little naive, and my father had pushed me, kind of being like, you should go to this tech school because you'd be like a really good artist here, so you'll be valued, as opposed to you want to be not necessarily the strongest artist. And so I didn't get to learn art for 4 years, and I didn't get to learn programming because I was still doing art for 4 years. And then all of a sudden I was out $44,000 in tuition, and that's not counting like rent that was also
Right.
coming out of my
Which
loans.
is a big point we'll come back to.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's some serious frustrations when you go into something and you want to put your research in, you need to put your research in,
Yeah.
and know what you're getting into. at a school, because this school was like, oh yeah, we're super balanced, we've got art and programming, and then I started like coaxing my first year art students to drop out and go to a real art school.
Wow.
As terrible as that is to say, but if you're not, like, you need to know whether or not you're getting the education there. So if you're seeing really strong art coming out of a school, that's a really good thing to see, but it doesn't hurt to talk to other students or other grads, because, like, especially now, like, if this were like a decade earlier and it wasn't $11,000 out of my pocket, I feel like I wouldn't be as frustrated as I am. So that being said, going to college was definitely the better choice for me in the end. There's like a lot of opinions about like university versus college over here, and they really push for university in my province at the very least. I don't know about the whole country, but going to college would have been the best for me. I think I got a lot more value out of my college degree than I did my university degree. I feel like I'm tangenting here, so if anyone wants to continue, like...
Yeah. Don't let your parents make...
Yeah, no, honestly, nowadays, do not listen to your parents.
Wow, okay.
Because they don't necessarily know anything.
100% agree on that one.
Yeah.
Or at least filter it and figure it out
Says the parent.
through what you know. Well, yeah. And like my dad gave me lots of advice too,
Yeah.
and he's somewhat out of touch, but I was able to at least know enough that I could filter through it and pick out what was relevant and what wasn't, and what might need to be modified.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, he worked in HR for a bunch of years, so he knew some of that kind of stuff, but he didn't know really anything about animation, and so like culturally it's a little different. So a lot of the things I didn't have to be quite as formal or uptight as the way he recommended doing it. But yeah, my parents gave some good advice, and then we're mostly kind of like, do whatever you want, but if you go over there, we'll pay for it. And if you go to college in Ontario, then you're on your own. And I was like, oh, well, free school.
Yeah.
Where my girlfriend
sounds pretty
going
good.
with
Yeah.
other friends. Yeah, that worked out fine.
Yeah. I will say, by the way, if you guys have any specific questions you want to ask the 5 industry experts that we've got here today, make sure to write them in chat and put like a big question, like write question in big caps so we can find it later, and we will get to those at the end of the hour. But you know, I want to ask something. Do you guys think that so I feel like a lot of kids and a lot of, like, when you're at that age, you have so many big decisions to make. You're like, what do I want to do in my life? What do I want to do in my career? And it's a lot of real tough decisions to make. But I think what I've kind of noticed is that the people that do really well and they kind of find the most direct route. They have a very specific goal in mind. They do their research into the career they want, and at least they don't kind of go, well, I like drawing, so I'll just do a course and see what happens. It's like they're like, no, there's this job that I want. This is the best university for it. I've asked around, and then they do it. And then when they get out there, it's very intentional about how they approach it. Do you think if people do enough research and really focus in on what they love, do you think they could maybe not have so many,
So on that, yeah, and in a Dale's situation, that's exactly what happened. Like, if you knew exactly what you were getting into, knew exactly what you wanted to do, knew the exact school that you wanted to go into to get a job doing that, yeah, that would be a perfect situation. But that is not like the majority of cases.
Yeah.
Like, most people that go into this industry don't know pretty much anything about this industry. Like, when I first went into school, yeah, you don't know what you don't know. That's a perfect example. But like, when I first got into school, I flipped a coin about whether or not I was going to be a programmer or an artist, because I had no clue how this industry was going to work. I thought I could do both.
Yeah.
And then when I went into art, I assumed I was going to be a modeler because I didn't know there were like 12 other disciplines in play here. And then it wasn't until I got into the program for about 4-6 months where I was like, oh no, I'm going to be an animator. This is actually fitting me like a glove. I think this is the way to go. If you don't know exactly what you want to do, simply because you don't know what you don't know, then I think that route is going to be really difficult. Now, if you're one of those people who try to experiment with all this in high school, like if you actually downloaded a 3D program and tried going through all the disciplines, or if you have friends in the industry, or if you have relatives and stuff like that, obviously it's a lot easier for you. But for everyone else, I gotta imagine it's tough.
Yeah.
So I guess the one thing, if you wanted to go that route, my advice would be to experiment. I mean, there's so much free software, so much free stuff out there that you can actually download and just play with this stuff, just to get a sense of what everything is. And then there's so many resources online where I feel like you could kind of expunge, but you really have to put in the effort, like way ahead of time before you even start applying to university and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. Like for me, I wanted to be a concept artist. That didn't happen. And I still definitely wanted to be on the creative field for games. But when I went to the animation course, it was more of a like 3D generalist course, not necessarily for games, just the animation field in general. And I went into animation because it's the only thing that didn't blow up in my face. It's the only time I didn't have programs crash. It's the only time where my rigs didn't explode. It's the only time where I didn't screw up. Like, it's just the only thing that didn't hate me enough that I could keep working on it.
Yeah.
Animator by default. That is funny.
I'm useless at everything else. It's great.
Yeah, you mentioned
that's a very humble way of putting. I was really good at this one thing. I was really terrible at everything else. So. Yeah.
No, I was only mediocre at the one thing. And I was terrible at everything else.
Sure. I believe you.
Yeah, you mentioned generalist programs, and that's kind of another side of the coin from like our Excel sheet here is all the really good animation schools that focus on animation. But there's like you can go to just about any university and college, and they'll have an animation program, but it's so generalist and you're spread so thin that it kind of winds up just being a little sampler course of everything, and you wind up graduating with no skill that meets the minimum threshold for any one discipline. So you're completely out of luck, and you've got to go find an online school to specialize.
Yeah.
So I definitely wouldn't spend more than like the first year sampling and being a generalist before you really focus down for the other 2 or 3 years to get good enough, because there's the minimum bar now to get in is so much higher than like when I got in.
Yeah.
You've got to be really good, so you've got to specialize. You can't spread yourself thin. It takes too long to learn this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I can see the argument for the opposite way too. Like, but for one thing, you definitely should have a generalist education for that first year. I agree with that. Like anything beyond that is probably too much. But I mean, there are still opportunities for people that want to be generalists. Like if you wanted to go in like straight into indie, which I don't recommend, but if you wanted to, that's a way you could go. And I still think there are like some like for freelance opportunities, you could go generalist and stuff like that. But if you ever wanted to go into AAA specifically, or film or feature animation, stuff like that, yes, you absolutely have to specialize.
Oh, and I don't want to be mistaken. I'm not saying that generalists are less than. Like a good generalist is like a superhero because they've gotten their skills in more than one area.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that when you're a student and you've only got X number of years before you're in the job market trying to pay off student loans, get one employable skill you can earn money with. Yeah. And then if you want to be a generalist or a T-shaped or something, add those after you've met the threshold for one skill first.
Because the problem is that it's in much higher demand right now to have one person that's really good at one thing than it is to have someone who's okay at most things. That's the way we're going. But I really want to focus up on okay, so we have a person and they're like, okay, what do I get for my money out of going to a traditional university, or do I get out of going to, let's say, an online school? What things do I gain out of having those 3 or 4 years and getting a degree versus going to an online course, which is a lot cheaper? We're having a look at some of the price comparisons, and let's say I think in the UK it's now up to £9,000 a year. When I went, it was £3,000. But if you go to some of the like top places, for these places it's like Ringling and CalArts, you're looking at 62,000, 55,000 a year. Whereas if you go to like Animation Mentor, I think it was more like 2,500 per term.
Yeah.
And that's the most expensive online school.
That's the most expensive, and that's for 3 months, right? And then so like Anim School is 1,600 every 3 months, right? So that's a big difference in how much you're paying. So I'd love to talk about what you guys think the value out of still going and getting a degree and going to a brick and mortar school is, a good brick and mortar school is, versus an online school. Maybe Alec, because we haven't heard from you in a bit.
Yeah, like, I mean, that's, I think money is like one of the major things, obviously play a role into the decision. But one of the things that like university gives you, like online school is like giving you right now, is the, I mean, it's like the bachelor degree that basically allows you a lot, I mean, it helps a lot with immigration, especially if you work in other countries. So that, I think like that's where all those money, to me at least, are going forward. It's like, oh, you can immigrate now. So it's kind of, that was kind of one of the things. Also, one of the good things about online schools is you get the rigs that they give you, and they're usually like very high performance rigs. So like Anime School has like a variety of them, and they keep adding new and new rigs, which is amazing. It's something that I haven't seen. I think Animation Mentor has a few ones, but in appeal wise, I just prefer Anime Schools more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's one of the things. You know, those rigs that you get to play with. Also, the professionals there at the online schools.
That's true.
Work in the industry right now.
Yeah.
You know, compared to like most most lecturers in universities are usually retired from doing that work, so they haven't really been doing it for a while.
I could argue the opposite. A bunch of my coworkers at Ubisoft actually teach at the local colleges and universities in the surrounding area. George Brown, Seneca, Centennial, like they all will take like a Durham College. Like my lead teaches at my old college for the game side, and I had no idea because it was a slightly different faculty. So it might vary depending on where you are, but
I definitely think
it depends. But I do know what you mean, though. There's definitely teachers who've not been in the industry, but there are chances that there are some that have.
And there's
that depends on what city you're in. If you're in a city that's got a bunch of studios like Toronto or Seattle or Montreal, then
I definitely found it was more closer to. You gotta find the schools that the people have had industry experience, and even if they've been out of it for a while, they're still keeping up with it. You don't want to have that lecturer that never got in the industry trying to teach you how to get in the industry. It's like those who can't teach don't really like that method. Would rather learn from someone who's actually done it, or people that don't have a pulse on where the industry's at because they did it 20 years ago, and they haven't kept up with things. They haven't done any research. So some of the things that I've heard from people is that, like for example, the timing, how much time you get devoted to you. So for example, when I was in my first year at University of Hearts, it was almost like working a 9-to-5 job plus homework with like 8 projects on top of it. So when you're talking about price comparison, you do get a lot more direct, usually with what I was doing, coaching, mentorship, that kind of thing. I think structured learning as well from that. Whereas when I did the Anime School term, we got 2 hours a week. One of them was an hour lecture, and one of them was an hour critique feedback session, and the rest was completely self-guided. Now that is not something to skip over. You are saving a ton of money doing it that way, but you've got to realize that you are missing out on a lot of hours of direct education, which might help you get better quicker. So if you want to get places quick, it might be a better option. And you also have usually if you're in university, you make some very tight-knit friends. I didn't have that kind of impact when I was on the online school, and usually those friends, if you're good and they're good, they've ended up in industry, and you have contacts that way. I'm trying to think of like other things that you get one way and not the other way.
Well, one thing that university definitely taught me was collaboration.
Yes.
And that you need to work with good team members, and it made me really respect my coworkers when I went into the industry, and I knew that I could help them because it wasn't a competition. It wasn't like one person versus everyone else. It was you're helping each other out to make a project or a product, depending on school versus work. But yeah, it's I do really appreciate a lot of the friends that I made while I was in university, even though we're like not even remotely in the same field. Most of my friends who I graduated with either like went back to school similar to me or went on to become like programmers, because my first game dev course was a very programming heavy course. So I really respected that. And but also I think the group aspect, as well as so like interpersonal relationships, but also I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart. The other thing that I felt worked better aside from like collaborative stuff was, oh my god, I'm so sorry, you just ignore me, I'll try to think of it later, but it'll come back to me. Yeah, it's lost, but we'll just stick with the collaborative part, and then I'll think of the other part later.
Yeah, do you mind if I jump in here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to kind of hatch over some of the points that were made earlier. So, Alec, like you were talking about, online schools definitely have unique rigs to each of them, which I don't know why that is. It's all the online schools happen to have like their own like mascot almost, or their own unique rig and stuff like that. And I don't understand why brick and mortar universities don't do this.
I completely agree.
That seems like a no-brainer to
Yeah.
me. Like Full Sail technically had their own rig. We had Bugsy, which was a situation, and
Yeah.
but like it definitely didn't have like the appeal of all the stuff from like Anim School, Animation Mentor, and stuff like that. Like I was so jealous of all the
Yes.
stuff coming out of those schools when I graduated from Full Sail. But to the point of universities not having people from the industry, that is a case-by-case basis. I do agree that happens in general. Again, I don't know why that is. That seems like another no-brainer.
I think the
I
amount
know.
of course load you get doing a full university course is a lot more demanding than an online school necessarily.
I can believe that, yeah.
I would think that if you're in industry and someone's like, hey, you want to be in industry and teach be a full lecturer as well, it's like, well, I don't think I could do that, but can you spare 2 hours a week? Yeah, I probably could do that, you know.
Plus,
Yeah,
if
and I think
you're
that's
teaching at a university at a degree level, in order to be like certified or whatever, you have to have a degree level
Yeah.
one step above that. So
Yeah.
in order to teach a bachelor's of
Yes.
animation, you have to have a master's of animation, which didn't
Which
even
nobody
exist
gets.
until
That
recently.
screwed
Yeah,
my-
nobody has that.
No.
That screwed my college over. My life drawing teacher from my first year of college, he hadn't even finished at Sheridan College, and so he couldn't teach at my college anymore. That was it.
Yeah.
It happened in the past, what, like 3-4 years? At
Yeah,
least
I
in
heard
Ontario.
That was a big problem with Sheridan because they had all these like Disney animators and stuff teaching there, but they didn't have
Yeah.
degrees because there was no such thing.
Yeah.
And so
No.
when they switched to a bachelor's program, they lost all the best
Everyone.
teachers basically.
That's ridiculous. So that's an argument for trade schools if you decide to go for like
Yeah.
brick and mortar or something like that.
Yeah.
But Sedona, I think you made an interesting point there about like teachers who actually are in the industry as they teach.
Mhm.
Because I was talking to Matthew Tovar. He was a coworker of mine. He works at Naughty Dog now, but he only works during the summer, and then spends the other 9 months teaching. So I think we're starting to kind of shift into this phase where, yes, we need that professional aspect, but we also understand that people can't be professionals if they're not in the industry.
Yeah.
So I would love to see how this develops in the future.
Mhm.
And I think online schools are definitely more forgiving. Like exactly like you said, it's way easier to teach for 2 hours and to actually
Yeah.
live and work at a university,
Yeah.
deal with that whole political structure and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you also
As
made
a-
another point.
Mhm.
You also made another point too about collaborative efforts, and I think you just kind of brushed up on the idea of networking, which is a huge
Yes.
argument
Mhm.
for why people choose to do brick and mortar schools. The idea that you are in somebody's face, you are working with each other all the time. There's that
Mhm.
kind of face value where you build up these connections. So when you graduate, you're able to kind of pull each other up and get
Mhm.
into the industry and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The other argument I want to make for brick and mortar schools is the idea of structure and accountability.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
something I have always needed in my education, is the idea that I have to look my teacher in the eye and be like, okay, yes, I'm going to get my work done. Here it is. I face the consequences and stuff like that. Whenever I do online classes and stuff like that, I tend to kind of fade out
Yeah.
just because I don't have somebody in front of me like holding me accountable for
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'd say, and I remember we were looking at an image earlier that says should we go to art school, and that was like one of their main arguments. Like, do you need somebody to keep you structured, give you deadlines, that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And if you do, brick and mortar schools might be a better
Yeah.
option for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
To build on the networking thing, though, I would just, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, Elise. The one thing I wanted to add to the networking thing is literally going to conferences and networking. Student discounts at some conferences are like huge. And that was one of the reasons I got really good at like networking with people. Is one of my teachers taught me networking, which is going and talking to someone at a bar and like getting them a drink and thanking them for their keynote. And so like that was something I got to do for only $400 instead of $800 for MIGS, and that's how I started. Like that is a really good tool as well, learning how to approach professionals.
Yes,
I don't think I would have gotten that
that's-
experience if I hadn't been a university student and gotten to go on the big field trip with my entire
Yes.
class to MIGS for like 3 days in Montreal. It was a blast.
That's
And
cool.
I would have not gone there if not for that.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're not in university, like it's not even like you can be a student, but you're not technically a student, and thus you don't get the discount. So it would have been $800 for me instead of $400. Yeah.
There's definitely something to be said for. I remember everyone always argues about, yeah, but at an online school you don't do group projects, and everyone's like, that doesn't matter, and it's like, nah, it's important because the thing is, right, is that if you're going to be in the industry, you're going to have times where you have to maybe crunch or maybe work. Will definitely work with other people on something. If you're an animator, especially, you have to communicate with the riggers and design and all these people, and if you've had no experience doing that and you have the skills to get in the job, you might have a bit of a shock when you're like, well, no, but I want to do it my way, and that's what I'm used to. And I think having the experience of
Sorry.
getting some of your teenage out before you get into the industry is something to be said. So I think that's something to bear in mind, is that you do really learn a lot from group projects on how you act and how to maybe manage that in the future. And also, what kind of person you're like to work with and what you respect in other people. Maybe they're very dependable, maybe they're very organized, maybe they have very high quality work, maybe they are nice people when the shit hits the fan, and maybe that's something that you work towards. So I do think you do improve those soft skills a lot more in uni. And then I hate that they're called soft skills because they are so important, really. And the other thing I think, which is really lovely that you said, is I have a friend who became a character artist, and they were completely self they taught themselves everything. I think they might have done some courses here and there, but it wasn't like I'm going to sign up for this course, I'm going to do this thing. And they are like a badass. They get up at like 4 in the morning and they work all day, and they're like super strict with their time, and they're exactly the sort of person I could see getting good real quick for no money, because they are just hyper focused, and they have that kind of personality that backs them up for that. But I know a lot of other people. I actually found this out at university when, for my 3rd year, I was like, oh, I know how to make myself work. I lock myself in my room, and if I can't talk to anyone or go anywhere, I'll get more work done. And then I was like, oh, I feel awful all the time. This is pretty horrible. And it is a thing when you have to be self-directed. You do end up becoming in a bit of a bubble, and a lot of people can't do freelance or can't work directly on their own, because they have the sort of personality that needs to be around people, and there are definitely ways around that, but I do think it's worth thinking about specifically what kind of person you are and what that would be best suited to, especially if you could use some extra help and support for kind of organization stuff, deadlines. You will definitely learn a lot about that, I think, more so in a brick and mortar school. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yep, all that. I'd advocate for brick and mortar schools as well if you can afford it, right? I mean, if you can't afford it,
Depends
it's
where
great
you
to know that
it's
you can
really
get
hard
this
to
targeted
justify.
online education. But yeah, like I could add to, I agree with Elise. Like if you're gonna goof up and make stupid mistakes, it's better to do that in school than at work.
Yeah.
If you're getting to know people, as opposed to an online school, when you're at a brick and mortar school, you know them outside of a work context as well. You're learning like greater social skills, general stuff. Like I enjoyed taking my electives, even though it was at times frustrating that I couldn't spend more time in the computer lab. Like I enjoyed taking, English and history and like psychology and philosophy and stuff like that. Like it's all stuff that I don't use necessarily, but it's kind of mind expanding. Like you get a bit more of a perspective on the world and other people and stuff like that. I think that's of value to building like character and stuff, but like that's a lot of money to pay for that. So it's totally coming from admittedly from a total position of privilege where I had it provided for me so I could take advantage of it. Yeah. And if you have to borrow 100% of that money, it's probably like you can go out and meet people and get that other ways. Yeah.
Well, no, I 100% think it's worth thinking about how much value this is providing you, what kind of job you're looking to get into, what kind of salary you can be expecting to get as a junior for a while, because you're not going to be on the big bucks right away. No way, Jose. You're going to have to get some experience. You're going to have to ease into it. It might take you a while, and if you've got $150,000 worth of debt riding on you, that is a hell of a thing to start off with. And I think there's definitely, I think that there has to be a point where you don't just go, yeah, well, it's an education, yeah, I get a degree, so it doesn't matter how much I pay. There has to be a cutoff point where you say, you know what, I could, for that amount of money, it's got to be more worth it to me to buy every Gumroad tutorial, do every, school thing, live in my parents' basement, go to all the museums, buy all the art books, buy a top-notch computer. There's got to be a point where you say, you know what, that is not worth the job I'm going to be getting at the end of it. And where those lines sit definitely depends on the individual, what country you live in. The other thing that we didn't mention but is very important is that because I'm a UK resident, I got to go in at $3,000, but if you're an international student, I think it was 10. So now it's like you go in at 10 and they're paying 30, right? So if you're unfortunate enough to be in a country that doesn't have any brick and mortar schools that are very good for animation or whatever it is you want to be doing, it might be your best option to go to an animation school. And then I think it's important that you recognize that what are the things I'm going to be missing from a traditional education. Is it networking? Is it learning how to do group projects? Maybe I should join some game jams. Maybe I should look at doing some competitions. Maybe I should go to some shows and do some networking and try and figure this other side of things out that I'm not going to be getting where I'm at. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where I don't know about you guys, but my parents were always like, education is most important. When it comes to education, money is not an object. The problem is that has changed recently, right? Because people are now realizing that people will pay anything for education and they will pay anything to get into the best school and pay whatever it is. And we have to be careful that at the end of the day, people don't care what school you went to. They don't care if you have a degree or not. They just care if your reel is good enough. And you can get that with zero education on your own back, blah, 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 blah. If you, buy all the books and buy all of this and really train hard, you can do it on your own. And I think, there's got to be a trade-off at some point where you go, is it worth $150,000 worth my next starting out?
Yeah. I don't think I could have, though. I don't think I could have done it on my own. I'm not the type of person who can stay that focused and disciplined to get it all done. I need people around me in an environment that is like, this is what you're doing now. Like, oh, okay. But if it's like, oh, you can do whatever you want, now you have to choose to do it. It's a lot harder. I need the structure and
definitely.
This is one of those things where I think that it could be argued that by this point, when do we start treating animation as a trade again?
Yes.
When do we start actually bringing people in, not necessarily as interns, but as trainees, trades students who get I don't know, because it is a trade. It's something where you need to practice hands-on because and I don't know why it's not, because that's how it used to be. I think it's probably because of the dawn of animation schools in the first place. But there's gonna be a tipping point where it's not feasible for the average person anymore to access this kind of stuff. And that brings up another subject, which is like this kind of shoots the concept of increasing diversity in the workforce in the foot.
Yes, I was thinking
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
how that, you know, there's certain places where there's certain options available to you, and if you want to go other places for that, it's going to be 3 times the price. And when you're saying this is the bracket for entry, what does that look like for a bunch of other people? But the
Yeah.
point that you made me think about was, yeah, at the end of the day, there are principles to learn, there are strategies, there are workflows that are going to make you a better animator. But, you know, let's say 70-80% of it is going to be down to putting the hours in and figuring it out and getting feedback, which you can get for free on forums and on Discords, like the Animates Discord, you know. And, you know, you can go that route. But one of the most rewarding things I got out of university was going from school where I'm like, I love animation and I love games, and everyone being like, yeah, whatever, nerd, and then going to a place where there's 100 or 300 other people that are like,
Other nerds.
yeah, we love that too, and you're like, whoa, that's cool. I
Yeah,
have
that support
so
alone
much
is a big deal.
passion and energy to be putting into this, and you know, it's hard to explain the kind of inclusion that you get from that, and that kind of validation, I guess, for like, this is the right thing for me and these people are like me, and that's great. And that's you know, they always say like, oh, you shouldn't go to university because of your friends, and I agree. You should not just follow blindly whoever your friends are at high school, but there is something to be said for being in an environment where, you know, the people around you are going to push you. You know, you're I remember I used to be like, okay, who is the top person in my class? I have to be better than that person, because if they're going to be working 5 hours a day, I'm going to be working 6, and if they're going to be working 6, I'm going to be working 7, and if they're going to pick up some extra life-oriented courses, maybe I should do that. And you're not going to get that in an online school, because maybe you'll see the rewards of it. You'll see, oh, their animation's better, but you might not have that direct connection of like, oh, I see, they've been going to every single lecture and I've missed 5 out of the last 10 or whatever it is, and maybe there's a connection there. And I feel like there's all these little things you learn along the way that you might not if you were just in your own insulated bubble. But it's true.
Yeah, I think you raised a couple good points there. First one being is like, yeah, you if you work on an online school, or more importantly, if you work by yourself, you have no idea where your benchmark is in comparison to anyone else. Like in brick and mortar universities, like every single one of you is doing the exact same walk cycle. Every single one of you is doing the exact same assignment. You compare, like, put yourself right up against these people and be like, okay, you know what? Here's where I am right now. That kind of a deal. It's kind of a false equivalency though, because, you know, you're not comparing yourself to every other brick and mortar school and every other online school and stuff like that.
But
so you can't possibly. So if you so if you graduate top of your class inside of your school, but then you look to the school to your left and you're like, wait a minute, every single one of these people is better than me. That's kind of screwed up.
Yeah, you've got to look outside.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I
would
got to
also
compare yourself to people who got into the industry, like even your animators, people who just recently got hired, and you've got to, those are your competition, not your classmates necessarily.
Yeah. I could also argue one other thing that I had issue with brick and mortar schools was the workloads were a little on the heavy side a lot of the time, and I found myself having to pick and choose which classes to skip in order to actually finish any of my projects. Because when you have a teacher going, oh, it's only 4 hours of homework, it should be fine, multiply that by 8 different teachers doing the exact same thing, it becomes extremely overwhelming. I think the only reason I survived college is because I transferred my university elective credits over.
It's definitely very stressful. The nice thing about online schools is you can do the 3 months and go, hell, that was a lot. I need a break, because I did that. Because I was in,
and then
I
you
had
only
no
have the
life.
one class.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I had modeling and rigging and life drawing and illustration and light, like you have 8, and then also your electives, and that gets really hectic, and that's not what you're going to be doing. I think it's good when you're trying to be a generalist and trying to figure out where you want to go, but when you're still having to do that modeling assignment where you have to rig your illustration character and then light him and have a render for them while trying to do your animation demo reel to get a job, it becomes so much that I think your work suffers a little, especially when you started to figure out where you're going.
Yeah, it can. And I agree with Sedona on this. Like at Full Sail, we were only allowed to take 2 classes a month. Only 2. But we had to do 4 hours of lab, and 4 hours of lecture. And so that was 40 hours of school a week just for these 2 classes. And that's only if you wanted to get a C.
Mhm.
If you wanted to do better than that, you had to put in a ton of extra work.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I pulled 12 to 16 hours a day for the entire 21 months I was there.
Mhm.
Just because I had to be better than everyone else. I had to be competitive so I could get the job as soon as I graduated. And that just fucking kills you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could definitely see your work. I am genuinely curious if how my demo role will be different if I wasn't pushed so hard all the time. And
Yeah.
Full Sail's kind of adapted to that. They actually have a more relaxed program if you wanted to do that.
Mhm.
But when I went through, holy hell, that was so tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, it was interesting. There was one point where I was asked to do like ages ago, a couple years back. I was like, "Oh, could you give some feedback to my students?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like they just wanted to chat, and I remember being like, "You have to be the best in your class. You have to go like blah, blah, blah." And the person next to me was like, "I breezed through university. It was chill." And I was like, "What? Like you're an intern here. I used to be an intern here. We basically got the same job, and you breezed through. Like what?" And they're like, "Yeah, you gotta have a work-life balance. You gotta go out and party sometimes." And I was like, I missed that bit. I mean, I didn't miss that bit, but
Yeah, what lecture was that? No.
yeah, but
No.
it was just interesting because I was like, that is not.
Yeah.
You know, and I talked to other enemies, and I was like, I really fought through uni in a lot of ways, and that this person who's done really well for himself didn't. And did I miss something? Did I not have to be doing it that hard? And they were like, no, I was like going guns blazing, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess there's like a
You missed the life part of the
You know,
work-life
it's still-
balance.
I didn't,
Yeah.
but maybe third year I could have had a bit more life to the. Third year was a thing. Yeah, it was a thing. That's okay, because
Yeah, I mean, you have to
Sometimes.
draw on your life for energy and for inspiration, right? If all you do is live in the animation world, then you get so myopic, and all of your references are animation, and all you can think about is animation. You're not, you don't have any original source material to draw from. Like getting out, being physical, sports, or just working out, or dance,
Having
or
a
martial
social
arts,
life.
what?
yeah,
no,
having a social life.
this
yeah.
is my
That stuff
social.
is-
I don't know, talking to people face to face, like.
Yeah.
And not necessarily,
Yeah.
and I'm not talking about partying. Like I didn't do that at all in school. But I spent a lot of time. I was on like a acrobatic team with a bunch of people.
Yeah.
That was like a social group for a couple of years, and that stuff is all super valuable, but in a way that's maybe a little hard to quantify.
Yeah,
and
and
you can't just
100% agree
discount
with
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's nothing more humorous than watching somebody do a punch animation who has obviously never thrown a
Yeah.
punch in their life. Like
Yeah, I see it all the
it
time.
is
yeah.
really amazing.
Mhm.
One thing.
And
Use
I-
reference, kids.
Didn't find reference, from somebody
Yeah.
who knew what they were doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think there's definitely something to be said for the structure that the universities do for you, and how they make you do the group projects, and it's a nice path to follow that has been laid out for you, where all you have to do is push yourself. And it's if you're at the right place, and you know that you've done your research, and you're like, if I do well here, the people that have done well are going to go on to good things. That's like a nice comforting thing to know. But unless you guys had any other major points, I wanted to talk really quickly. Oh my god, my notes right now, like I've got like 3 pages of this. It's like I'll wrap up. My wrap up's getting huge. But I really want to talk about what resources can people use who are, maybe they are at university and they want to do extra stuff. I don't know how you have time, but maybe the course they chose wasn't quite what they wanted and they want to do extra stuff. Maybe they're in an online course and they want to do extra stuff, or maybe they are pre-uni, pre-courses, they don't have a lot of money, or maybe they are trying to teach themselves. What are some of the sites, some of the places we can send them to that they could benefit from? Like for example, the 11secondclub.com. So yeah, 11secondclub.com, 11secondclub.com is a monthly competition, and you can, every month they do a 11-second-ish voice clip, and you can download it and submit your entry, and you can also post up on the forums, get feedback from it. And the nice thing is, at the end of it, they all get graded in a way. They get like ranked, and I remember thinking, I was like 4 months into animating, and I was like, I'm gonna be like top 10, and then I was like, you know, bottom 5 or something. And I was like, oh, I see. This is. I thought I was. And I'm actually, you know, because everyone goes through that phase where they think they're amazing when they first start. And yeah, I definitely, it's nice to see yourself work up through the ranks, I guess. And people also give you feedback. And there's a great support on the forums. So maybe what are some of the other resources that are good?
I'd say go on YouTube and find Keith Lango's VTS tutorials that he's put up. They used to be a subscription service, and he's released them all for free there now. And it's, I mean, it's old, but the animation knowledge is still super like good stuff. Yeah.
Definitely, and also like Kenny Roy's done the same thing. Kenny Roy has like thousands of videos. Like I know it's thousands, but it's like at least 100 videos of like just tips and tricks here and there.
Yeah.
Which is nice to learn.
Yeah.
I don't know about other websites.
There's Anim State is awesome for more interviews and stuff, and there's also our Discord that you can find on the site, which is the-animates.com, and there's a link to our Discord if you want to join it. And there's also an Anim State Discord, and they both have critique channels where you can post your work up and get feedback from a bunch of animators, a lot of whom are, you know, in the industry and know what they're talking about. So it's a really good, reliable place to get some extra eyes on your work.
Yeah, I spent about 3 or 4 hours yesterday giving critiques on Anim State.
There we go.
Yeah.
There's also who is it? Aaron Blaze has a bunch of like 2D art and animation tutorials, and then I believe Toniko Pandoja just created their own animation school, which is pretty affordable from the looks of things. I'm sure it's like, I don't know how the quality is. I'm sure it's good. Toniko's stuff is really amazing, and like if you don't follow them on Twitter yet, it is. Their work is stellar. So
just
I think
a quick raise of hands. Raise your hand if you currently have your own free tutorials online somewhere. Oh, okay. I thought it was gonna be
like that we've created.
that you've created.
I suppose I did one of those talks for Kenny Roy.
Oh, nice.
Did a guest lecture like 5 years ago.
So there's a bunch of free and paid for animation tutorials on Gumroad. There's a bunch of free stuff on YouTube. What's another good place that's tutorial based? There's a couple of like pay for ones, like Onionskin.fr is a really good website to check out for.
Yep.
I'll put that in the thing.
For game animation specifically,
Wasn't there
I
like
think
one
Anim
of the
State's animstate.com, right? Yeah.
One of the animators did like a really cool like a package deal for like game animations. What was it?
And also there's a bunch of free rigs everywhere. Animation Buffet, Animation
Malcolm 2.0, Mary, Matilda
has like the mega list of every free rig ever, basically.
And honestly, but I think the bigger thing here is if you want to kind of supplement what you're already doing in university, thing like that, find a social group. Find some kind of online community where you can kind of bounce ideas off of, kind of gauge where you are, get help, get resources, that kind of thing. Like for instance, Animates and Anim State, both are Discords. They have multiple channels for getting critiques, finding resources, tutorials, talking to professionals, getting advice, that kind of stuff. I have people reach out to me about once a week that are students, and they're like, hey, you know what? How do I structure a resume? How does my demo reel look? How does this go? Like, how do I approach GDC? Like, it's just any kind of question whatsoever. So if you're in university and you want to kind of get out of that like little myopic bubble like you were talking about, there's so many ways you can reach out to other people and talk. And even Twitter is a fantastic place to just discover professionals, see links that people are passing around, talk about industry news, that kind of deal. It is
really good work in
probably
progress
one of the
stuff.
best tools in your library right now is Twitter.
I will say I did see a tweet go up from someone who wasn't an animator but was an artist that was like, hey guys, I am super happy to answer any student questions, but please do like a little bit of research first, because I get a lot and it gets kind of tiresome answering the same kind of questions. So just bear in mind, like, if you're asking questions from industry professional, try and like you have to keep them short, but try and keep them like stuff that you can't just Google anyway. Like, don't be like, hey, where did you study? I have a LinkedIn, I have a resume, like you can check that out. Like don't be wasting
What program do
your
you
time.
use?
Right, yeah.
Creep
like,
on me. Seriously.
Yeah, like it's
Mine are
really
Blender.
hard. It's really easy to find like basic info. Like, oh, where are you working? You should probably know that if you're asking my, feedback. So it's not that you shouldn't ask questions. It's just you're going to get so much more out of the person if you ask specific things, or if you want feedback, or if that kind of thing. Just do some research first.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, cool. So, have we got any more points, or should we do the wrap up and then the Q&A, or the Q&A and then the wrap up?
There's one thing I did want to cover,
Yep.
and it's about school specifically.
Yep.
Finding the best one for you.
Yep.
How would you, like, if you were a student, you were just graduating high school, how would you best approach finding the school that would work for your situation?
Yes. Like maybe questions that you should ask people, or
Yeah.
like I remember when I did this, I wanted to find out what the best animation school in the country was, and I was going to go to that one. That was my plan. And then so what I did was I asked about 15 people who are in the industry. I was like, hey, what's the best school in the UK for animation? And if you ask enough people, you'll get the same kind of 1, 2, 3 at the top, and you kind of go, okay, like I kind of figured, Bournemouth and Hertfordshire kept coming up consistently, and I was like, okay, if I go to one of these two, I'll probably be good because I've asked enough people. So maybe what are some other questions that are good to ask? What's your industry placement rate when you go on the open day? Like, go on open days, by the way, because you should do that. Go and see what the lecturers are like, because they will give you a good indication of the kind of energy and that kind of thing. Industry placement rate, because some universities will go with job placement rate, and that means that if someone in the 6 months after graduating got a summer job at ASDA, they're like, yep, we placed them in a job, and it's like, nah, that shouldn't count. Like, how many people got into the career path that I got the degree in? That's definitely something to ask.
I almost wouldn't bother asking though, because a lot of the time at those, they're recruiting. So they're gonna, if not outright lie, they're gonna at least color it or spin it to make
Maybe.
it sound as good as possible.
Yeah.
And I would
When
go
you
try
pick
to
up
find
on that-
hard data.
Yeah.
I would look
No.
on LinkedIn and search
No.
like animator, name of school, and see who actually is an animator now
Yeah.
that went to this school. And if
Yeah.
you can't find any hits, I realize not everyone's on LinkedIn, but if you can't find any hits, then it's
Mhm.
probably not going to work for you either.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. Talking to the schools directly can be very misleading, and if you can't pick up on when you're being manipulated and stuff like that, that can be very detrimental.
Yeah.
Great example.
Again,
I went to GDC, and I made it a point to go to every single booth for universities, schools, art schools, stuff like that. And schools that I had for a long time perceived to be really, really beneficial are not great, and some that I had no clue about actually have really offer really great programs and stuff like that. Like I went to the booth for Ringling, and I sat down with somebody. I was like, "Hey, can you walk me through what your curriculum is, what you learn, and stuff like that?" And it turns out their curriculum is pretty terrible. Like for they do a generous education. They have their own personal project, but if you're going into animation, they don't cover mocap at all. Like they don't have I feel like their instruction staff is lacking, stuff like that. Whereas compared to the Academy of Art in San Francisco, outstanding program. Like I loved everything they had on there. Like it was just fantastic. So to me, the best resource if you're going to look into a university or where to go, talk to actually industry professionals. Talk to people who've been in the industry for like 3 to 20 years or whatever. Be like, hey, based on who you hire from, specifically, it's like, okay, if you're looking at UK specifically, what schools in the UK am I going to do, or what are the online school benefits? But just knowing, like, hey, who do you guys hire from? Break down your animation department. Where do these people graduate from? That kind of stuff. I think that's way more beneficial than actually talking to universities or your guidance counselor who has no clue what they're talking about, or your parents who are way out of the loop. Like my dad thought for the first year that I programmed animation to make it work, and it's.
Yeah.
So the only people who are really going to know are people who've been there.
Yep.
Plus, you'll get a good sense of how they talk about things. Like if they're like, well, we kind of did this thing, I guess, but you know, whatever. And then we went on that, and I don't even know, like, it was a whole thing. Like, you're like, ugh, okay, well, it's not really the enthusiasm and the passion that I was looking for, so, you know, it's like, never mind.
Another thing I would like to argue for things that you should be looking into is how much money are you going to be making as a junior animator in your area when you graduate, and
That
how
is very
screwed
valid.
are you? Because so in my case, I've mentioned it before, like my coworkers who I have talked to who have a much better understanding of my debt situation are flat out like, okay, yeah, like they were very like, oh, back in my day it's shared, and we had to wait for the thing so that we could, like, we were there at 5 a.m. waiting so that we could use the camera, you kids in your render farms. And then when they mentioned my tuition, they're like, that's the one thing where they can see that yes, that is the thing that you have harder. And so in my case, like, I graduated with $80,000 in debt, which is very different. Like, if I were making money, if I were making as much money as an animator would, like a junior animator in the Animators Guild in the United States would, I would probably be in a more sustainable financial position than I am currently, which is unfortunately like half of one of my paychecks just goes to student loans, and that's minimum payment. So that is my predicament, and it's really hard when you are in one of the most expensive cities in the country, which a lot of studios are. So you have to consider your budget very seriously, and you need to figure out how are you paying for this? How is it going to be paid back? Are there any sort of, like I had, because a lot of that money just went to rent and stuff in college too, and like I didn't have time to get a job. Because again, the workload was so immense. The only thing I could take was a TA position. Like I taught while like learning, and so I have like half of so I get a paycheck at the beginning of the month. Half of that paycheck goes to rent. The other half of that paycheck goes to student loans, and that's it. That's gone. I have to wait for my next paycheck for anything else. So, and that's in a small 3-bedroom in Toronto. So imagine my frustration next year when I'm going to have to find a place, and studio apartments are $1,600. So there's
oh no,
it's worth it to go to these schools. Sorry, my camera went black. So you have to think about, like, going to school is one thing. Being able to pay back all of that money over the next decade to 15 years is a completely separate. Like, just keep that in mind, in my opinion, because there's studios in big cities, there's studios in small cities. You may have to move. You'll probably have to move. The industry is unstable. Is it?
You keep cutting out. I don't think we've missed. I don't think we've missed much. I think we're okay.
Okay.
I think it's
Are we
like a
better
word
now?
here
Sorry,
and there.
I don't know what happened
You're good.
there.
You're good. I think.
Okay, sorry. New mic. Who this? But yeah, I just keep your future, because this is about your future, and you are going to have to be able to survive. And if you look into, like, I'll find there's a really good article that just went out a couple months ago about student debt in the US and how much of a nightmare it is. So so just I want you future animators to be in as stable a position as possible. Like, I'm still fairly lucky even in the position I'm in. So just consider that when you are trying to get into the industry, because there's so many other financial considerations you have to put in. Because this is not the most well-paying job on the planet, easily.
Right, yeah. Do it because you love it, because you can get paid much more for a lot less effort somewhere else.
And just a heads up, if you go to school in the United States, you're going to be paying like 10 times more than people in Canada and the UK and stuff like that. It's going to be nuts.
Yeah, it's
and you'll have to pay for your health insurance on top of it.
Yes.
And your
oh my
living
god,
costs.
I didn't get health insurance for the first 5 years in the industry. That was so goddamn rough.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And you've got to also bear in mind your living costs. Like, no one wants to be living in their parents' basement, but no matter what you're doing, you've got to bear in mind, like, what extra are you paying to live in dorms? Could you be saving that if you were at home and you didn't have to move and you didn't have to pay any transport costs and your parents could help you out a bit and you could do an online school, blah 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 blah. So yeah, I think we've covered a lot of good things. I'm going to try and sum it up. I've got a lot to go through. For the most part, I think unfortunately, this is why it's such a big topic, right? It depends on your financial situation. It depends on your parents' financial situation. It depends on where you are, specifically in the world, because, you know, student loans are very different depending on where you're at. And it depends on what kind of personality you have. It depends on how self-motivated you are, how much you need that group of people, and that kind of thing. But I'm going to try and do a quick wrap-up. So I'm going to go through this, and while I'm doing that, feel free to post up any questions in the Twitch chat, and we will try and get to them right after this. So
we got a whole bunch of them too.
Oh my god, yeah. Oh yeah, good.
Exciting.
Cool. So feel free to chime in with any of these points, by the way, guys. So you get what you put in. This is like one of the key things. Like, no matter what education you're going for, it's going to be about how many hours you're willing to spend on it. No matter what you do, a degree isn't going to save you from having a terrible showreel, and, you know, vice versa, that kind of thing. I remember when we got to our course, we were told something like, oh, only 10% of the industry, only 10% of the people on this course, the top 10%, get jobs, and that's just a job in the industry. You have to be in the top 5% to be in a job that you want. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be in the top 5% of my class. Like, that's my goal, because I want to be able to choose where I go. And that may or may not have happened, but I definitely worked like it. And I think that helped, and I think it's something to bear in mind, that, you know, you get what you put in no matter what. So you can always be learning, and even after uni. So like, if you I think we had a couple of people that said that they did a course and it wasn't for them, or it wasn't quite what they ended up in, and they retrained, they did more courses. You can still keep learning, and even in industry you can do more courses there. Don't listen to your parents. What do they know? For the most part.
That's so blunt, but it's absolutely true.
No, just like in terms of this industry, get their opinion. By all means, get their opinion on stuff that they will know about. Like, if they went to university, what were the downfalls for them? You know, what are some things to be careful about? Maybe even your budget. Like, you can totally run your budgets by them, and, you know, use them to help you do research on where the good schools are, take them to the open days, what they think about, you know, stuff like that. Jobs come through networking, so make sure that if you are missing out on that in your brick and mortar schools, go out and try and find people. Get on Twitter, post your work up places, get on, you know, forums, get on the Discord places, go and meet people in real life at conventions if you can afford it.
We had a whole topic about this, yeah.
Yes, we did. I think it was called networking, wasn't it?
I believe it was.
Yeah, so that's up on the Animates YouTube and website if you want to get more into networking specifically. But bear in mind that, you know, it can be a lonely business being self-taught, and it could be a lonely business being at university, and you just, you know, bear in mind that there are people, and you should make friends with them, because we're all lovely. Well, most of us. Put in your research into the course. Well, I really put that one down right. Do your research. Because it makes a big difference where you go and what value you get out of that education. There are a lot of courses, call themselves video game courses, that are not worth paying the money for, and they've got no one there that has been in the industry or ever has been in the industry, and there's a bunch of people who are being told that they're awesome and they can get in the industry on the work they've got, and they can't because they are being lied to, because then the school gets their money and they're being taught nothing, and you have to be real careful because there are terrible courses and you do not want to go to them. And don't just go, oh, I'll go to the one down the road, because you don't want to be 3 years in and have spent a bunch of money and realize that you have no skills from it. It's a real thing, and I have friends that have done that, and it's the most heartbreaking thing, because it's not that they haven't worked hard, it's just that they have been misled, and just get in a good place if you can, because you don't want to go the other route. If you can, have a specific goal and job in mind, because it will mean that you have a more direct course to what you want to be doing. If you are absolutely desperate to work in games, maybe try and find a course that's better suited for game animation. Maybe try and do more animation that's that way inclined. If it's film, maybe go that way instead. That kind of thing. Talk to other grads about what kind of courses you could do. Guys, I'm not even off the first page. I'm gonna have to go quicker. Talk to other
Maybe
grads.
we should put the list up online
Oh, man,
instead.
I don't know
Would that
where.
make you feel
I'll
better?
do like another 13-page long Twitter post or something. Talk to other grads about what their opinions are of the schools they went to and what places to go to in the area, because they will know best, hopefully. You don't know about what you don't know. Yep. Degrees help with visas. That is one of the big things.
Yeah.
They can help with moving country. If that is something that you want in your future, it might be worth looking into getting a degree. Because if you are quite happy where you're at, great. But if you do want to move countries, it does help. To what extent it helps is dependable on the studio, but it does give you some extra points to getting a visa. So just bear that in mind. Online schools have high quality rigs that can show your work off better, which I don't know why universities don't do that. But in the same token,
Does it make us to our own rigs?
But in the same token,
Yeah. Hold on, I think we lost our audio. Yeah, your unrecognized USB might be a bigger issue than we
Oh
thought.
no.
Oh, no. Well, at least they can't hear that.
Yeah, chat's freaking out now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, just Elise?
It might be-
Okay, there we go. You're good.
She's just dropping F-bombs the whole time. That's all it was.
I mean, they're saying it's back. Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Okay.
Yep.
Don't say that.
Shut it down. We'll get to your questions, man. Nope, your audio's gone again.
No. Is it all of us or just Elise?
No,
That's the
just
other
Elise.
question.
Just,
Huh. That's so weird. Oh, it must be your mic input in specifically OBS. Animation, Elise. Do it through the interpretive motions of animation.
She's working on it. S, is Animation Mentor the best option for online course? With that course, is there any chance of getting a job at a big studio?
Mm,
I mean, it is the oldest course compared to like the rest of them.
it's
Yeah,
the most
I agree with that.
established course, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. I mean, Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know about the
Second.
people.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Let's hear it, chat. Can you hear Elise?
Got one vote
But
for yes.
I don't know if animation would be considered the best option. I mean, I think there's a lot of viable options for online courses that so you don't have to specifically pick animation mentor.
Yeah.
Okay, so no.
I think they need to decide on the style they want to go for, because I think
Mhm.
like all the animation schools have like their own different styles a little bit, because also like depending on the rigs.
Hello? I think that might be back.
Yeah. So I think
God,
because like anime
okay.
school, I think is good for
That one?
stuff.
Anime school is good for critiques. Is that what you said?
It's back.
Oh,
It's back.
cartoon,
For cartoon stuff.
Okay,
Oh yeah, gotcha.
cartoon
we're good.
Yeah.
based.
Okay, now we're back. We're good.
Okay, my bad. Okay.
So
We'll just turn this back up. 1 sec, sorry. Right. Group projects,
So-
don't be a dick. Learn how to be a decent human being to work with by doing group projects that you might not get in online school. Oops. Oops. Oh god. Oh god, no. Okay, it's fine. It's not on screen. Friends you make at something. Uni. Friends are good. You will get connections and you get the inspiration and motivation from people being there. Have the right kind of personality for being self-directed if you're going to be working on your own. Animation is about putting the hours in, so while a degree isn't going to get you a job, you can be self-taught, you can get in the industry doing it that way, or doing an online course. It's not going to make the difference, except potentially for visas, although I haven't had anyone. I actually know someone who I don't think has a degree that managed to move studios based on his reel, so I think it's okay.
I'm
You
going to disagree
think?
with that point.
You think?
Yeah, I don't think teaching yourself is going to have the same benefits as going to an online university or a brick and mortar university.
Okay.
I actually went around and I surveyed a whole bunch of people about what, like the people who specifically did not get a degree and
Yeah.
did not go to school and was completely self-taught. Is it possible? Yes.
Is it probable?
But out of all the people I talked to, not a single one of them ended up at a AAA studio or at feature film or anything like that. They all ended up in kind of like generalist positions or doing like mod work or indie games or stuff like that. So I don't think it's a really truly viable situation.
Yeah.
Ask me again in 2 years because I'm really curious to see how it develops. But
It might be the case that it's
There's
like.
some who do it, but they're the exception.
It might also
Yes.
be the case where it's like, sure, they didn't directly get into as high of a place as they would have if they'd have done an online course and paid a bit more money, but it doesn't mean they won't work themselves there doing it in their spare time. Like there must be QA people that are, like I know there's QA people that have gone into other positions. I don't know of any animators, but I know people that go into audio from
not
that.
as much as they used to.
Yeah.
That used to be like a huge selling point. It's like, yeah, no, just get your foot in the door, do QA,
Yes.
and then you can move laterally into other positions
It's
and
not
stuff
quite.
like that.
No.
Doesn't happen as much as it used to.
No.
I've had a ton of people try to do that in my studio specifically, and it just never happened.
Yeah.
I think it's just like it's kind of like running for president 2 times in a row. Like if you lose the first time, there's no chance in hell you're gonna make it the second time because people have already like, oh, he's already failed. He can't possibly do the job.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
I also knew
If
a
you're gonna-
tech.
You've got to do it to a new studio because you can't really move up in the same place
Well-
where they've already decided what your role is.
Well, I knew
Yeah.
someone who was a tech animator who was QA, and they went with the same company into a tech anim position.
It's definitely harder though.
harder.
Based
Yes.
on, like my friends who have been trying to become artists from
It's hard.
QA, like they are. I feel they'd have more luck.
Yeah.
Like going elsewhere, but they're trying. It's just it's slow goings.
Yeah, although
And, like,
I
they've
will
been there longer
say
than I
that, you know, if you didn't want to go the traditional education route, I knew a guy who, he would get in early every day, and every day when I got in, I walked past his desk and he would be doing animation, and he was QA, and I'd be like, oh, hey, if you ever need any help, like, let me know, and I'll help you out, and, you know, I think if you have the right attitude, you could definitely do it that way, potentially. Okay, right, more on the list. Go to conferences and network. The brick and mortar schools might not be as specific or focused towards what you want to be doing. If you go to an animation school, you will only be learning animation. There are pros and cons to that. Bear that in mind. find the best school for you specifically, talk to industry people and professionals in your area about what they recommend. How much money will you be making as a junior animator? Be aware that, you know, if there's got to be a point where you say getting paid this much is not worth going to a debt this much. So just bear that in mind. And also, I think one of the points we didn't bring up, but is worth saying, do your degree in the recommended amount of years instead of doing it, like failing and doing it over twice the amount of time, if possible.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to do it, if you're going to spend all that money, really dedicate yourself to doing it and to getting the best results possible. The people that you talk to who are in industry and who've made it are there because they have pushed themselves, and you need to be a motivated kind of person if you want to be in this career, I think is worth saying.
I'm like that.
Cool. Have we got any questions so I can stop talking?
Yeah, so let's go back to the first question again. So Beowulf
Yeah.
asks, is Animation Mentor the best option for online courses? With that course, is there any chance of getting a job with a big studio? We talked a little bit about, yeah, it's a fantastic program, but it's not the only program.
Yep.
So I think other programs are just as viable for getting a job in the industry.
Yep.
So if you want to look at like Anim Squad, Anim
School.
Animate, stuff like that, yeah.
Not animation.
Oh, did
we should make our own online
also-
school. There we go. That's next step.
We also did talk at one point about how a lot of these online schools are really, like, you end up having a lot of hand-holding.
Yes, I was literally about to bring that up. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, you mentioned it last time, I think.
Yeah, so the point that you're making was that I have heard from people being wary of people that have only done an online school, in that the attention you get is much more. They haven't had the same hours necessarily. They need a lot more hand-holding and feedback because, yeah, they're much more reliant on getting that extremely detailed feedback to get that one shot. Whereas when you leave them on their own and say just do cool animation, it's sometimes not transferable as you'd think. So I personally haven't known anyone like that because I haven't met anyone who's only done an online school, but I do know of people who are employers that are like, look, if we get this person in, we do have to make sure that they can pass an art test, because if I leave them to their own devices and don't give them like as much feedback as they would be getting on an online school, how do they fare? So
Yeah. You're hiring them. You're not hiring all the people who gave them great feedback.
sure,
Yeah.
So
yes,
You gotta kind of tease those two things apart.
yes, yeah. Just
Yeah,
because you can
it's a
create
balance of, like,
one good shot, yeah.
yeah, it's retaining all of that knowledge.
Mm.
Like, there's definitely a lot to be learned. Like, I definitely learned a lot from my iAnimate course. That being said, I have no shots from my iAnimate course.
Yep.
So, like, I had a good teacher. He was a good lead. But yeah, I think there's definitely like a balance between, like,
Yeah.
there's teaching and there's being an animation lead. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of the online schools can skew towards acting as more of a lead than anything else. But it's you have to retain the information and not be reliant on the teacher
Yeah.
to make it better for you.
I think
Yeah,
one of the big things that I see as a warning point is when I get a reel from someone who has been using the online animation school rigs that we all know and love, and I'm like, okay, they obviously went to the school, and then in the reel there's like one terrible shot, and you think, are you one of those people that hasn't developed your animation eye to the point where you can see that that's terrible unless you directly get a ton of feedback on it? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I personally, did Anim School. I thought that was great. The way I decided on doing that was looking at all of their like end of year presentations of all the student work and seeing which one I liked the best, and that's just how I decided. But I have heard from people who do Animation Mentor that the kind of community stuff is a bit better, like the actual talking to other people. So it might be worth paying. If you're going to be only doing an animation school, it might be worth paying more money to get some of the extra nice bits that they give you. Whereas I think if you're already in industry, it might not. I don't know. That's my personal opinion.
It's subjective, yeah.
Yeah, subjective. It depends what you want to get out of it, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask this question because if I don't, I think this person's gonna pop. This is a question from Shun Anime. Are there any high quality? Are there any high quality frame by frame animation studios in the UK that you know of?
Frame by frame, like
I'm assuming
keyframe.
it's hand key animation.
Okay.
Keyframe?
Keyframe animation.
The top two that I was recommended to me were Bournemouth and Hertfordshire.
Can you type those in the chat?
Yeah.
Schools or studios?
Oh, studios.
Specifically
studios
the UK.
is-
Oh yeah, so it's studios. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what do you
I mean, like
like?
places of employment versus schools.
I mean, where do you like working?
I assume there is, but
I mean, it's not hard to find great studios, to be honest. You could Google that, I think.
But does it mean like feature or VFX, or is it like game studios?
Yeah, there are definitely some VFX studios in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of VFX, but I don't know there's any feature.
No.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to say, yeah, London is great for a bunch of effects companies. But I think the thing is, if you're fresh out of school, I mean, to some extent, any job is a good job. To some extent, that's in the industry, getting your foot in the door. I think getting that first job is really difficult, and you shouldn't be like, well, I want to work at X company, so I'm going to turn down every other company. I think
oh god, no.
because
No, that's
you
the
can
exact
surprise
opposite of what you
yourself.
should be doing.
Right, you can
Just
surprise
get any
yourself.
job.
So
Just any job.
I do
You
think
get whatever
that
the best possible thing is you get, and
Right.
then you get the next best possible thing, and it may take several of those.
yeah. But for schools, I think it's a little harder because it gets a bit more murky. For England specifically, I was told University of Hertfordshire, Bournemouth has two programs, I think, one more technical, one less technical. Don't quote me on that. I was also told about Glamorgan in Wales. I think it was Wales. There was one up north that I visited. Might be, I want to say Staffordshire was one that got brought up a couple times. There's a couple other ones that I've heard have been doing better recently, but you'd have to talk to someone close to the situation. I personally have nothing but good things to say about University of Hertfordshire, and I know a lot of people in industry who were at Bournemouth. I've heard that Bournemouth tends to be a lot more slanted towards film, and I think they're a little more technical. You have to do math classes and stuff. I personally found that the lecturers seemed more like on my level at Hertfordshire. I don't know how else to explain it, but like when I went for the interviews, I really clicked with the people there, and yeah, it's I 100% recommend that. But yeah, do your research.
Okay, so next question. Beobold asks, do studios have like a partnership with universities? Like, for example, if I want to go to Sony Animation, should I go to university in Canada? And is it worth the money it will take for me to move from Portugal to Canada and pay for the university? Or maybe is it more worth it to pay for a course in animation mentors and then send portfolio to Sony Animation?
I think it depends on the studio. Like, I know some colleges will be partnered with, like the government will run a program with local studios so that the government pays for half of the wages of the interns. I think Christy, like during like Christy Moore, who was one of the Off Tangent people, had a similar situation where she was hired through working as a temp intern when she was a graduate because the company had a program. Ubisoft, on the other hand, they don't have that, but they do a grad mentorship where they have like a competition. They have the next, like UB Next, where students will there's like, depending on what you're at, programming versus art versus animation, where you submit your reels and you submit your art and you like do a programming assignment, and the people who win get like a lot of nice swag and an internship. So there's a lot to be said about, like, I think it varies from studio to studio. So if you want to work at Sony, maybe look, but I don't necessarily know if they have something like that. It depends on if they've got some partnership with the government that is giving them incentive. Also, like, if you want to work at Sony doesn't have to be your first studio. You can, like, the place where you're gonna really get your skills is at your first jobs. That's where you really start ramping up. I don't there's not very many graduates who are going to come fresh out of college like and be like, I am ready to go work at Sony. Like there is a lot more to learn.
Yeah.
So if you want to work at Sony, don't necessarily
put all your eggs in one basket by spending a ton of money moving countries and
at least.
Hey,
and then work towards your dream job.
I worked in the UK for 4 years. You got nothing on me. No. I was gonna say that I'm blushing now. If you're in Portugal, there are definitely, I know of some Gobelin in France. It's a seriously amazing place to go for animation. There's a ton of good ones in Germany that I know of, and there's a ton of good ones in England. So I feel like you can get away with being a lot closer to home. And don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure you will get an amazing education with potentially a lot less cost, because you will be an international student if you go across borders. And if you find any in Portugal that are amazing, great. And if not, I feel like there's a lot of places you can go that are a lot closer to home that might be discounted if you're in the EU. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I don't know. Brexit, who the fuck knows anymore? But I would say, don't choose your education based on the studio you want to work at. In terms of a one-to-one thing, I think do it on, these are some really great places, these are the best ones near me, I will go to those. That's how I would do it.
I will say, sorry. That being said, it's so, this actually does happen a lot more than people think, where studios and universities have a relationship with one another. But they're not, it's not an official relationship, and it's not advertised.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Sony San Diego, VSG, they actually pull directly from Full Sail every month for junior animators. So they'll just look, they get like a little flyer from Full Sail every month that shows every single student, and it ranks them from like top to bottom. And Full Sail pretty much just grabs like the top 2 from the top, just every single month, and that's where they mainly get their resources from. My studio, Sony Ben Studio, is they take most of their designers from Champlain College. So they will directly go to that college and be like, okay, who do you got this year? And they're like, okay, we'll take this guy and that kind of thing. So is it a thing? Yes. But again, exactly like Elisa, don't go to a university specifically because you think it's going to make it like easier for you to go to a specific job.
Yeah, I wouldn't go to CalArts just because, reasons and things. Like, that's like, if you're already going to be paying over $150,000 in debt, like, do you also really want to add moving country and international fees? And also, you're not even going to have specifically a visa. When the problem is, right, that people don't understand is that people will pay to transfer talented artists across countries, but that doesn't necessarily, in most cases, apply to interns and juniors, because at that point, it's like the value is not there. It's so much more of a risk that usually when those things come out, they will say you have to have a visa or be eligible to work in this area to apply for this internship/junior position. Usually an internship. So be aware that just because you're in that place, if you don't have a visa that allows you to work there, you could just end up going straight back home.
Or be eligible for a visa. Like in North America, they've got like a, their NAFTA thing. You don't get the visa until you have the job, but it's pretty easy to get.
But at the same time, like, visas are expensive, and for an intern, I don't know what the likelihood of paying.
The worth of that.
Sure. But I would say that I was lucky enough that the university that I went to was already close enough to London and a lot of places that I could easily get to that would have industry connections. Whereas if you're out in, I don't know, Australia or somewhere where there might not be any, maybe it is worth going to an international place to be closer to places where you would have that connection. I don't know. I haven't been in that situation personally.
And that being said, Europe has so many amazing animation studios that you could learn a lot from. Like, one of my favorites right now is Studio Fortiche, which has some gorgeous keyframe animation.
Did you say Platige?
No,
Oh.
Fortiche.
Platiche is good too.
They did
So if you,
the Riot
they did
cinematic recently,
KDA.
right?
Yeah, they do a lot of the
Yeah,
Riot
okay.
cinematics. They did
Oh,
Pop
nice.
Stars by KDA.
Nice.
They did Freak of the Week, which is like gorgeous and sorry.
Yeah.
I love that studio. I've been in love with them as soon as I figured out who they were.
Cool.
And no, France in general just has like
There's
such
a ton
solid
France has a lot of
community.
cool studios, yeah.
Yeah, and
Hey,
Germany and Spain. Spain has some really cool studios. There's
Yeah.
a ton in London if you want to be more effects based, and some game companies around the UK. But who knows with the UK anymore and
Yeah.
Brexit and. Do we have any more quick questions? I've already kept you guys 40 minutes
Yeah,
over at this
we
point.
got about 4 more here.
Oh, man, are you guys okay staying for another
I'm
It's
cool.
fine.
little bit?
Yeah.
Sure.
If anyone leaves, all my setup breaks. So I would say it's cool, but it's not. We
Alright,
either have to
so-
call it or keep going.
Next question. With All Boy asks, would you recommend that an online school have at least a course or a semester where students do a group project or animation? And I think that was in reference to, brick and mortars have a lot of collaborative projects, but online schools don't.
Yeah.
So the question is, should they have it?
I mean, the
so
problem is that the online schools are generally like animation specific, whereas at a university you usually have riggers and modelers and people that you can band and environment artists and people you can band together and make a solid project with. Like with the project I worked on, I was the animator and the rigger, and then my two friends were environment artists. I had two environment artists and a VFX artist / lighter that we all worked together to make that project. If you did it with an animation school, I don't know how much
I think the big issue, ideally, yes, it'd be awesome to do a collaborative project, something like that. Even if it was all animators, you had somebody
Yeah,
else running it
it
and
would.
doing all the technical aspects of it. But I think it would be a logistical nightmare.
Yes.
Oh
To
yeah.
try to get a group project online. Like, have you ever tried doing like an art collab or something like that, where you try to pull a bunch of artists together? It is
Different
just
time
ridiculous.
zones and
Yeah.
it's a
And
lot.
just like even version up software alone is just
Yeah.
such a bitch to deal with, and I
Yes.
can't even imagine doing that from an online perspective.
yeah.
So, should they do it?
Yeah.
Probably not. Ideally, it would be really good, really beneficial, but I can't imagine them pulling it off too easily.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of like emerging platforms now that are sort of building around that idea of having a virtual collaboration space where
Yeah.
they've got version software and
you can do
uh,
game
run like
jams
Maya
as
off
well.
the cloud and stuff like that. But I think it's a ways out from it being like
Yeah.
Yeah.
not.
But yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever done like art collabs or art partnerships or like build up groups and things like that. But these online collaborations, they suffer from the two main things I was talking about about brick and mortar schools is the idea of accountability and communication.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not seeing these people every day and you're not interacting with them every day, that accountability starts to kind of like fade off to the side, and before you know it, the whole project falls apart.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with communication. It's like if you don't stay on top of these people, then it's so easy for things to just kind of rot away and die. So
And- yeah.
I have a hard time believing that they can maintain that kind of aspect through online alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also the subject of a lot of people who are taking online courses are probably also doing this part-time. Like
Yes.
with brick and mortar schools, you're usually there full-time and you are super committed. And then you
Similar
have
positions.
other cases where it's someone that's doing it on the side and they're just doing it when they can, and that
Yeah.
makes it really hard to
And
do
if they drop
something in
out or
which
something.
which other people are reliant on you.
Yeah.
Like again, I
Yeah.
dropped out of an iAnimate course. I'm really bummed about it still. That was a valuable course that I unfortunately missed out on because life didn't want me to do it. So there's too many things. That being said, I am curious to see how it changes in the future, especially with how established Blender is getting as a free tool.
It's been making waves. I would
Yeah,
love
that's-
to see it, but in practice right now, oh
It's really
yeah,
tough.
I
Like,
feel like
even
you'd
our-
pull your hair out. Just
Yeah.
also the thing is, I feel like okay. So just for some quick perspective, my second year project was a disaster. It was awful. Like we were all over the place. No one was working with the people they wanted to be working on. We got something out the door, but it was awful and it was horrible. But the third year project was amazing because I'd had 2 years of already making that group of friends, and then we all went into a project together, and we knew what we wanted, and we knew that everyone was going to work hard, and we had that trust already there. So it worked really well because we already had a foundation to build off of. So. Yeah. Anyway, next question,
there's-
maybe?
Next question.
Sorry, Sedona.
No, it's okay.
Shepard asks, is it possible to balance a university and an animation course? How much time do you think you need to take out for an online workshop?
No, don't do
You don't want to
it.
say it in the
No.
Don't do that.
Maybe over the summer, but don't do it at the same time.
Yeah,
Oh.
Okay,
do
yeah.
it over the summer.
I can't even imagine doing a job and animation courses.
Oh, it's
Like,
hard. I had no life. No
I
life.
did that for like the whole time
Yes.
I was in school.
Really?
Yeah.
And how
I
hard
did
was
it
that?
for 2 years. It was really hard. I slept literally for 2 years, about 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
God,
2 years.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I just
I
remember. Go
I'm
ahead.
glad you're
Yeah,
still
it was crazy. I gained weight. Like I've never been able to gain weight in my life. I gained weight.
Yeah.
I was like a lot like very tired. I had dark circles under my eyes.
I still have that.
Like,
That
yeah.
is hardcore.
Makeup man.
Yeah.
You did it for
That
2
is
years?
insane.
What? Not when you were, sorry, when you were working or when you were at school, did you say?
That was when I was working. Like
Yeah.
when I was at uni, I used to work like all the time to pay off my rent. And then when I started working in the industry, when I wanted to learn 3D, I started learning 3D at anime school while I was still working.
Yeah, I did it. I did it
Wow.
for 3
Yeah.
months, and after that, I was like, I need a break, or I'm gonna like. I mean, it
Yeah.
kind of was nice in a way because my life became animation, and that sounds
Yep.
bad, but what I mean by that was like my life
Really,
became
yeah.
so streamlined. Like it wasn't like, what am I gonna do when I get home? It was like I have no time. This like, what do? I wake up, I animate, I eat, and then I go home and I animate. And
Yeah.
do you want to come? Nope, I've got to animate. And would you? Nope, I've got to animate. And it's weird because I got into this like super zen mode where it's like nothing can phase me. I can't get stressed. I can't focus on anything. I just have to become like a robot for 3 months and get shit done. And
Yeah.
it's like you get into this like higher level of production because you just have to. But that doesn't mean that's healthy for a long period of
Yeah.
time. And I had to like end that 3 months ago. Okay, I need to go see my friends. I need to like see the sun. I had like no life
Yeah.
for 3 months, and I mean that. I mean like I didn't go to a pub night. I didn't go out for coffee. That was it for 3 months. And
Yeah.
considering
I
doing
had
that
this-
again is
I did something
every
really
time I-
similar. Like for me, when I was in university, I was pulling so
Get out the
many
cave.
late nights and overtime. Like I had to build my own computer to be more efficient because the computers were so old. I pulled like all-nighters in the grad lab while like, and I worked nonstop while being a teaching assistant, which is very time consuming too, even if it is one class of 120 students. But then like, I just remember starting my first job and like being thrown into 60-hour work weeks, and all my coworkers were like, oh my gosh, this is awful. Don't you agree? So don't I? I said, what are you talking about? I have weekends. Like that is how much work university was.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot.
like,
It's a lot.
yeah, just don't do it.
Yeah.
I will
Do one
say,
or the other.
I think it's a smart idea to continue your education if you get your first job. So, like,
Yes.
every online course I've taken, I've done while working full time, and it's doable. As a matter of fact, I've even seen people at different studios. They'll actually group together and be like, okay, let's all take this class together, and we'll actually
Yes,
do this
that's
class
what I
at
want.
work after work,
Yes.
and we'll move together.
I'm looking at
And
you,
I think that was a
Sedona.
fantastic opportunity. But
Yeah.
I would drag you in
Um,
with me.
definitely don't do it at university and take
No.
another university
You're
class.
better
Like,
off
that's
focusing on university and the money you spend. And I think even take summers to just practice on your own, because you can get a lot out of doing an animation course, but at the same time you need that summer to see the sun and to regroup so that you're mentally prepared. And I wouldn't think to do that. It's a lot. You
we never
can
got a summer vacation.
yeah, like, but you can get so much out of just doing your own scheduled like works, like personal projects. You know, the thing is, I feel like I got through university years, and when I got to summer, I had so many things I wanted to do. Like, I was like, I have this like crazy animation I wanted to do, and this other thing, and you know, I had so many cool ideas that I was already brimming to do that I didn't even think about signing up for more courses. And also, I didn't have the money. Like, why would you get the money? The thing is, when you get in industry, a lot of people will have a education program, and once a year you'll have a certain amount of money, you sometimes in like a AAA company, that you are allowed to spend on extra courses and things like that. So if you can wait till you're in industry, you might get some or all of that course subsidized by the company, because the company
Yes.
likes it when you improve yourself. So,
Yeah.
do you want to wait and
Yeah. Next question, I guess.
Next
Was there anything
question.
you wanted to say, Ted?
Nope, just
Oh,
agreeing.
okay.
Okay. So next question comes from Beowulf again. Are there specialization courses at university, or are they all generalist courses? In Portugal, the course in the university is like 2 years of theoretical classes, 1 year of practical. Is it even worth it? Online courses are almost all practice.
Wait, what was that last bit you said? The courses are all.
Said, they said
Practical.
online courses are almost all practice.
Is that from someone from Portugal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if they really want to immigrate, I would say if they want to immigrate like outside of like Portugal into like across the pond, I think they should definitely. I think at least for me, I did university just because of that reason, because I wanted to immigrate easier.
Yeah.
So online schools is not going to give you that, but if you're really good, I guess they can take you. I guess so. I'm not sure how it works with immigration, but I guess you can come.
It also depends what country you want to go to and where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But
There's.
to
Go ahead.
answer the question, I'd say if you're going to do any of the online animation schools, all of those classes are specialist classes.
Very
There's not going to be
specialist.
general education. There's not going to be generalist stuff.
right.
Like you said, you were talking about like a bunch of theoretical courses. There's none of that.
No.
Like at Full Sail, all of our stuff was practical.
Yeah.
Even our like liberal arts stuff, like psychology, we oriented that around game development. Mathematics, it was all around game development. Physics, it was less about doing formulas and stuff, and more about understanding how the real world worked. So like there was no nonsense to it. Well, I mean, there was still nonsense. There's no point in taking liberal arts courses, but still. So if you're going to take an online course, I think no, it's all going to be specialization to go there.
Yeah.
Just yeah.
I mean, you can take multiple specializations if you want to take rigging and modeling as well.
Yeah.
You could do that,
Yeah.
but they're all going to be practical.
There
Yeah, but
is
why do you
something
hate
to
yourself? That's-
there is something to be said though about learning the rest of the pipeline. It lets you as
Yes.
an animator more effectively communicate with other people. Like one thing I did get from university is I know how programmers work. I know when they say that something isn't feasible in the engine, it's not feasible in the engine. And like it gives you more empathy for the people that you are working with, and it helps you guys work together
Yeah.
to get something. So taking a generalist course, honestly, I think it's a great idea.
I think for the first
did
year.
learn a lot,
yeah.
and like I'm rigging a sword because I need to rig a sword, and I don't like if I were to just have taken like an iAnimate course, I would be like, okay, I need a sword. Can someone make me can anyone get me a sword? I need a sword rig.
That
for
used to
my
frustrate
guy."
the hell out of me.
So-
I went to Sony and there was a guy there who graduated from Animation Mentor, and he's like, "Do you know how to rig?" And I'm like, "Yeah, basic stuff." And he's like, "Can you rig a suitcase?" I'm like, "Do you seriously not know how to rig a suitcase? Like that's a really kind of fundamental thing."
Yeah.
And I had to do it for him twice because I rigged it for him and then he forgot to save it.
Link to
No.
Then I had
basic
to go
rigging
back and do it
course.
again.
Yeah, something that
There
sorry.
No, I was just gonna say. I just mean there is value in generalist courses for sure.
Yeah.
I
There
think
is.
you could get a lot out of it.
But at the same
as much as we
time,
rip on it.
the university, the industry is generally looking for specialized people. So I feel like having like a year worth of here's all the stuff you could do, and then really focusing down, I think that's great. But like
Exactly
just
what
like a
Adam was talking
3-year
about.
long generalist course is, I'm not sure I would
Well,
go for that.
One of the things, like our industry has become so competitive nowadays that if you know some stuff like connected to rigging and so on, you can add additional controls to your rigs
Yeah.
to achieve extra, obviously, effects. I mean, Alessandro from Toronto show he did like recently a video about it, how he was pushing his
Blend
rig
shapes.
shape.
Oh yeah, I
Blend shapes,
literally used that yesterday, where I was like, I want the eyelash to rotate down, and because she's like looking down, it looks really freaky when it's not, and I was like, I will make a blend shape for it. It's the first time I ever made a blend shape, and I was like, this is so magical. I can just push the rig how I want it to. Yay!
Yeah.
And David even did it during one of his own streams. He
Yeah.
was like, "This is this rig I set up for a breaking spear." Like he did it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's definitely a valuable thing to learn.
Yeah. Something else that I didn't think about that we didn't mention is that when you go to a brick and mortar course, you get that FaceTime and that direct like usability. It's communication gets lost online sometimes, and I could go and sit in labs and work in labs and have an environment where I could work and I could ask for help directly, and people go, oh yeah, you just do this, this, and this, and point stuff out and show me stuff directly. And I feel like you're not going to get that kind of hand-holding in an online school. If you're also not that technically minded like me, I found it very helpful to be like, why the hell is Maya the way it is? And oh god, it's so complicated. And they can be like, no, don't worry about all that. Like, we're just going to look at this bit. And, if you go to an online school, yeah, you'll be just learning animation, but there'll be all sorts of other stuff that you're like, what the hell is all this crap for? I don't know. And
and you can still learn all this stuff later, too. I mean,
sure,
it's not like
you're going to
cut
have
off.
to, if you have problems, you're going to have to figure it out yourself. Because it's they're there to teach you animation, not how to teach you Maya, I guess. I don't know if other people agree, but yeah.
All right. So last question here. This is kind of a follow-up question from before. Beowulf asks, thanks for answering, but I made 1-year courses, 3D animation and VFX. I've been practicing and learning for 5 years already from the books, online, and with my mentor.
Okay.
And now
nice.
I've been working as a freelancer for 2 years. I mean, what should I do now to start animating in a better studio, or maybe feature film? So this is a person who's graduated,
Yeah.
has a long history of education, has worked in the industry for
freelancing.
like 2 years, and just wants to go to that next level. What can they do?
I would say personal projects or take a course. Honestly, that's what I would do to get better. And unless you're in a position where you can like collaborate with people and be like, we all have this cool idea we want to work on and it's gonna look really great. Like I would do my own stuff to like work on areas that I'm not comfortable with. Like I know my acting skills could be better, so I try and like work on my own personal dialogue pieces at home. And I also took a course because I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. I could use someone who has a fresh pair of eyes that is going to take me through a dedicated course. That's what I would do.
Yeah, just about polishing your reel.
Education is really nice. I'm at a point now where I'm trying to like put my animation in front of my coworkers and stuff like this. Like, okay, here's where I'm currently at right now. Where's my weakness? How can I get to that next level?
Yeah.
And figure out what to take from there.
Going to GDC was actually a big help to be like, because I was like, I think I'm kind of getting there, and then you just like, whoosh, here's the bar, and I was like, oh, fuck. But it was nice to kind of get that reset of like, oh, okay, I can now see that the bar has been raised. So I think kind of playing games and watching films and getting that awareness of stuff you want to try out is also a good thing to be doing.
I'd also say
asking
just
friends.
try applying to some places.
Yeah, definitely.
You might not know where you can get in until you try.
Yeah, and if they reject you, you can ask for feedback. Like, oh, is there something I was missing? We've had people that they applied to us and they didn't get the job, and they said, hey, what could I work on? We were like, well, we weren't really seeing this, we weren't really seeing that. And then a year later, they applied again, and we were like, oh my god, this guy really loves our company. They've done what we said. We're really impressed. So it's just because you're going to get rejected, it doesn't mean that that's you failed. That also means that you have got extra knowledge about where you can go. You have started building that connection where people know you're not just spamming everyone, but you're going, I really love your company and I really want to impress you guys. Like, what can I do? And if you've gone away and acted on that feedback, that's a good tick for us. So yeah.
Honestly, like, don't be afraid of applying. The worst thing that they do is say no.
Yeah.
You have to do a lot to get permanently blacklisted from a company.
Yeah.
So yeah, just
Man,
don't be afraid of rejection.
It's hard, but
I know,
that's a thing.
but yeah, it's something you have to learn so that you can make that jump.
Oh, cool.
So.
Other questions? Anything else? It's like
That
6
was it.
o'clock now.
Thanks.
We good?
Yeah, I think that was the last one.
I don't know where to get feedback to improve. I know the NM State Discord at least. just email David like every day at like 2 a.m. and then 3 a.m. and then if he doesn't respond 4, 5, 6, 7 a.m. and you find his email address here. No.
Send it at Comic Sans.
Yeah, if it's not Comic Sans, he won't read it. So, and make sure you put like lots of GIFs on it, like before you get to any of the actual sustenance. And
It's funny. Curtis actually did a new intro page, and he
I
specifically
saw
sent
that.
it to me
I
for
saw
critique.
that. That was so funny. That was so funny. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think there's There's the Anim State Discord, there's the Animates Discord, there's the 11 Second Club forums, there's the Polycount forums, there's, what's the other forum that's really good? There's another forum that's like an animation-specific
we'll put them all
one.
in the chat or in the Discord.
Yeah, and then also you can just put a Sync Sketch link up on Twitter and be like, hey, animation people, I would love some feedback, and people are generally pretty helpful, or if there's someone you know that you admire their animation skills, just ask them directly. I think a lot of times when people are like, here, world, help me out, people are like, oh, it doesn't apply to me, like, someone will help them. And then sometimes it gets missed and no one comments, and they're like, oh, I can't get feedback. But if you go and say, like, look, I respect you as an animator, I really want your opinion on this, could you give me some, like, really harsh feedback? Generally, they will give you the time, and if not, like, I'm sure someone else that you know would. So feel free to reach out to people that you know directly that are near you, or people online. Because
I get people from Anim State that contact me pretty frequently about, like, hey, you know what?
In Comic Sans.
Look at my reel right now. Look at my animations right now. Am I ready for the industry? Can I get employed with this?
Yeah.
And I, you know, tough love. I tell them exactly what they need to hear.
Yeah.
And go from there. Yeah.
Cool. We good?
If you're using Sync Sketch, I think it defaults to private.
Yes.
Like almost every time I see somebody, like, they post it, like, give me some work, give me some feedback, and then the next post is like, I can't, it's locked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make it open, and then people can.
Yeah. I also saw
I
that.
even have that on my.
I recently uploaded some stuff to Vimeo, and I've seen that they now have like a comment, critique review session thing, where you can actually put like comments specifically on like time framed marks in the scene. I don't know if you can draw over anything, but there's I literally saw it pop up as like, this is your review page, and I was like, my review page? What? This is pretty cool. So I think you can even do it on Vimeo now, but I do like Sync Sketch because it's nice and quick and it's got all the functionality you could possibly need.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
And if not, like, if you really have to, like, just shoot a YouTube video, like, you can, but like Sync Sketch is free, so I don't know why you wouldn't. I know. Cool. So that's it for the animates for this week. Next week, I think we have quite the treasure coming in, who's I don't want to say in case I'm wrong or in case they're busy, but it's going to be a fun one, and they've been on the list for a while now. We kept like missing like schedule syncing, so really hopeful it's who I'm thinking of, and it's going to be really fun. And then we have some really great talks lined up, but yeah, check us out on the Discord. You can find all our videos and stuff on the-animates.com, and yeah, we're here every week, every Sunday.
Almost every
Try
week.
so hard.
Most weeks. Most weeks. We're pretty good, except for last week.
Let me crash your party.
Yeah, thank you so much to our guest.
Thank you.
I really wanted to call you Mr. Tim Horton for a second. Sorry, that's terrible.
I got that a lot.
Do you? Damn it, not even original. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming, and hope to see you next week. Bye guys.
Yes.
Later.